Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for new stories from Yellow Cat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. Let's get started. What happened at your workplace to cause mass quits, Part 2. We were acquired. They want us for what we do. They're not looking to make changes, stated our president. Then, after receiving several $1 million for selling us, he fled. We're not going to be changing anything. We want everything to go as it is, declared our new rulers. We work for a software development company, so they replaced all of our laptops with lockdown versions where we couldn't even install software. They blocked access to GitHub. They stated, "We have the means to help ensure you are fully funded and able to grow." We were refused regular raises and declined to cover promotions costs. They reduced the money we had set aside for hiring. We were chastised by them for holding our annual Christmas party. They stopped hosting welcome luncheons and sometimes had lunch catered. They said to us, "You did a great job getting these huge new customers. Our profits have exceeded our expectations." Then they claimed in our performance reports that we only met 61% of their expectations, which they used as an excuse to refuse us bonuses. After that, they completely destroyed our office networking and installed their own. Our Wi-Fi rarely works at all, and our Ethernet cables are no longer functional. It drops 20 times a day on average. They denied that there was a problem, even though we had lost more than half of our office. We eventually reached a point where we ran out of desks for everyone after we replaced everyone who had left. Because there was nowhere to sit, we were forced to make people work from home for 8 months. We had some floor space we could have used, so we could have survived with more desks, but they refused. We now have additional room for desks. After a few months, they install sensors on our desks to track when we use them. Their goal is to identify all of the desks that are left empty during the day so they can be used as hotel desks. I now anticipate that when I arrive at any day, my name will be gone from the desk and that a random guy will be seated in its place. I'll keep the company's name private. However, you know who you are, A-hats who are reading this. Never before have I seen a corporate office so disengaged from its workers' needs. Give me the raise you ought to have given me more than a year ago, then go bork yourself. You repeatedly postponed the payment that I was promised for all of the responsibilities that I assumed. F you. When I was younger, I worked at a local grocery store that was owned and operated by a charming elderly couple who had owned the business since the 1960s. The store was located in my neighborhood. Approximately 6 months after I began working there, the couple decided to retire and sold the business to a local businessman who owned a number of different establishments in our town. He brought in his own management team to run the place and told us all that he wanted us to elevate the store to be real competition to the big-name supermarkets in our area. However, it was obvious that this was never going to happen, and we were all aware of this fact. The guy was a complete and utter D-bag. Eventually, he began to incur losses on his investment, and as a consequence, he began to raise prices. In addition, he micromanaged every employee at the company to the point where they were unable to breathe. He claimed that he had not become a self-made millionaire because he did not know how to run a business, any business. This was a phrase that he frequently repeated to us in an effort to boost morale. The final straw was when, around the time of Christmas, he was advised by his account to either increase sales by the new year or sell the place. However, this was not going to happen because we had a Walmart opening within a few weeks of the new year. Then, he had the audacity to fire one of the cashiers who had been working for him for the longest time when she told him to his face that the process increases and aggressive selling tactics he had implemented had driven away all of our once loyal customers, and his attitude towards us, his staff, had done nothing to improve the situation. He became a complete nightmare to work for, excusing people of intentionally undermining his authority and trying to run the shop out of business in order to get even with him. After that, everyone showed up at work the following day, and one by one, they all quit right there and then, right in front of him. The store closed down about 2 days later. Had a part-time job in a comic book store for 10 years. From 1999 until 2005, I worked in online sales and backlog. After the proprietor passed away in 2005, his wife took over the business. While he was sick, he worked on a handbook on how to run the business, a list of regular customers, and the books they read, the birthdays of every employee, and what they could eat or drink, and some historical accounts of the store. Throwing that book in the trash was the wife's first action upon entering. He was a strange guy, but a really nice person. He had pictures of his wife, but we'd never met her before. No children. After that, she started marking the books at their mint condition price, even though they weren't, and pulled out an overstreet price guide. This occurred during a month-long period. She removed all of the $1 boxes and placed them on the shelf as though they'd just been released, which was the last straw. At the end of her first month, we all had a meeting to talk about what was wrong because a lot of veteran vets were canceling their pull boxes. She believed her husband was too timid to pull the trigger and that each of the number ones was worth $1 million. 6 employees and I left because she would not listen to us. She would say things like, "Only talk if you have $100K in savings like I do, if you spoke up." The store closed down not too long after, and she went to jail 5 years after for wire fraud and embezzlement at some other place. While I was living in my hometown of approximately 800 people, I worked as a waitress at a Tex-Mex restaurant that was owned by a family. Even though this was the case, the company appeared to be doing well. All the servers would receive the tips that customers left using their credit cards at the conclusion of each shift, which was given by the owner. Over the course of 8 months, I was employed there, and I began to get the impression that I was not making as much money as I believed I was at the end of the day. As a precautionary measure, I started keeping a record of each and every credit card tip that I was given. When the night was over, I had not yet accounted for the tips that I had marked down, and I was short by $20. As a general rule, I'm too busy to stop and inquire about how much money they have left, which means that not all of them can be accounted for. People pay at the front, and the proprietor undoubtedly checks them out. She claims that she had probably just miscounted when I brought it up, but I asked her to go through them myself and discovered that I was missing $30 additional in addition to the fact that I had a combined total of $150 missing from the 3 other servers who were working with me that night. Unbeknownst to God, she had been stealing money from her employees for an undetermined amount of time. All of us demanded our money and immediately left the situation. Without a doubt, we informed each and every other server, and they all resigned as well. Because no one wants to work for a thief, the business was shut down after word spread throughout the community. Small-town gossip triumphs once more. Throughout my entire career, I've worked in the food service industry, and I've never witnessed such petty behavior. Probably unwanted side note, everybody, if you go out to eat, please tip your server. We make less than $3 per hour, and we rely on that to pay our bills, which is something that we really appreciate. This is something that ought to be common knowledge at this point. Americans, what is your most horrific encounter with a homeowners association / neighbors from H, Part 2? A word of context, in 1977, my mother purchased the house that we currently reside in, and she's been a resident of this location for the past 27 years. Following the divorce that my father had with my mother, she stopped taking care of the house for a period of several years. I was unable to assist her because I was still a child, which was unfortunate. Rewind to the present day, and we are at last beginning to work on fixing it. To begin, one of the problems was that the siding in the backyard was becoming loose. While we were waiting for someone to come out and provide us with an estimate, we were required to wait in order to pay for it because it was quite pricey. During the time that my mother's away on vacation, I receive a notice from the city informing me that we have 1 month to repair the siding or else we'll be subject to penalty. Because of the enormous rose bush that's covering the siding that's fallen off, it's important to note that you cannot even really see it. I'm going to call my mother on that very day to inform her that there's a random woman in our backyard, and I'll ask her to leave our property and tell her who she is. This rose bush is way too high and needs to be removed immediately or we will be fined, she says, claiming that she's from the homeowners association that's located behind our street. I tell her to get out of where she is and go kick rocks. 2 weeks later, I receive another notice from the city stating that we're required to clean our yard or else we risk being fined. This requires us to clean up our yard. Therefore, the next day, I go to the town center where I live in order to have a conversation with someone in order to obtain an extension and to clarify what they mean when they say clean. As a result of the fact that they continue to receive calls and complaints from, you guessed it, the local HOA, they tell me to simply trim up our yard and otherwise take care of it. In addition, they informed me that they were beginning to become exhausted by their complaints because, in general, they do not enforce the aforementioned things because they believe it's a waste of both resources and time. Due to the fact that they call each and every time, my partner and I have been experiencing issues with them ever since, and we are literally unable to take any action before consulting with the city or a lawyer. Furthermore, they have on multiple occasions threatened us by stating that they were going to call the authorities on us. After speaking with another neighbor, I learned that they have also experienced difficulties and have been attempting to coerce our neighborhood into joining them. The HOA is a joke. We had new residents move in next door at my previous house. The area separating our residents was not enclosed, but the boundary between them was evident due to the presence of a stone pathway and the alignment of our front yards and driveway. There was a full fence around the backyard. The fig tree that overflowed into our yard with the previous owners produced fruit in the summer. Although the fruit was technically theirs, we were essentially responsible for handling it because the tree was on our land. Although we could have removed the dangling branches, we preferred the figs. During the summer, some new residents moved in. A few days later, as I was working at my desk, I noticed the two neighbors, whom I had never met, were picking figs in our yard through the window, right outside the window in my bedroom. Clearly, not in the space between the buildings behind our house, on our side of the fence, and halfway down our yard. I say hello, open the back door, and stick my effing confused head out. They give me a crazy look and say, hi, in return. As though I've woken them up. I simply went back inside and closed the blinds because I was so shocked, uncomfortable, and alone at home. I was pretty upset about the figs at this point. After a month or two, I returned to my room, still wrapped in a towel from my shower, and I see that my husband is once more in the yard, 10 feet from the window in my bedroom. I currently live in a house full of girls and am 21 years old. 10 feet away from my window stands a fully grown man. This time, I'm angry as I go outside after closing the blinds and putting on some clothes. Ask, is there anything I can do to help? He also mentions that he's trying to locate the property line. I state unequivocally, it's the fence. Do you mean the 6-foot-tall wooden fence that divides our yards? He makes a comment about believing that a small portion of their land is actually ours. I basically tell him that's not my problem, give my landlord a call, and remind him to ask permission next time before entering our yard. The guy waved me away as if I were crazy. A few weeks later, I was moving out, but it was such an awkward and rude experience. I've never been introduced to these people, so I still don't know their names. We only really spoke when they were invading my yard and pretended I was interrupting them when I asked what in the world they were doing. See, it all began when we moved in. It was just my mom, my older sister, and me. Our mother told us to leave the boxes on the porch so that she could take them to the end of the driveway when we were done moving in. There was way too much stuff to move for just the three of us, so it took 2 days. On the second day, my mom was told that the boxes couldn't be on the porch. They were broken down and thrown to the end, folded up and in a bin of the driveway where the trash would be picked up. Well, the next day, we got a second warning that trash can't sit at the end of the driveway unless it's trash day. After a few more months, we had a pool, a dog, friends, and, to make things easier, we weren't allowed to play in the front yard or put up anything in the front yard that wasn't okay with the HOA. It was crazy. My homeowners association HOA is not very expensive. It costs $300 annually, but it can be very critical about things like boats parked next to the house. People will put boats out of storage and temp park fishing boats during fishing season, doors painted with the wrong color, or semi-trucks parked on the street, trucks, not trailers, when guys are home for the weekends or something. On the other hand, during one summer, they began fining people for the most insignificant of things, such as having dirty mailboxes, leaving trash cans out for an excessive amount of time, and failing to trim bushes. People were beginning to become irritated by it. It was not until later that year that we learned that the company that was managing the HOA had misplaced all of the money, and they were attempting to retrieve it in order to fulfill their obligations, which included the maintenance of the park for the children and the maintenance of the common grounds. In the end, it was discovered that a woman who was employed by them had stolen practically all of the money, which was more than $800,000. If you want to watch the part 1, click the link here. We're very glad to see you all in the comments again. And many thanks for support.